All right, everyone. Sorry for the delay. Great to have everyone here this morning. We're going to try to make this as actually a little bit more informal, more of a workshop, not a panel. We do want a lot of participation. We're trying to actually kind of solicit feedback. What we're trying to do here in this workshop is propose what we're calling kind of a vehicle wallet reference design, in which we will look to kind of create something in which folks within the payment ecosystem and the OEM ecosystem know how to work together and know how they might be able to bring their piece of this equation either to the OEM or to the payments community. The OEM is really looking to try to chase down software-defined revenue or software-based revenue, and I think what underpins that capability or the ability to do that is really an expertise in payments. And what we're trying to do here is to bring that payments expertise to the automotive community and really make it so that these kind of software-driven revenue is kind of how Amit has described it, is really a reality and can be delivered with how the consumer expects it to be delivered in this kind of seamless fashion. Let's go ahead and introduce everyone who's kind of participating or kind of leading this discussion. We'll start with Vamsi over here.
Sure. Morning, everybody. Hopefully you had your coffees already, ready for the discussion. So I'm Vamsi Putrevu, CTO, co-founder of Mavi.io. We are an in-car commerce marketplace. We bring over 200,000 QSRs, parking and charging and other demand to OEMs directly. So just as a background, I've led engineering and product teams at Apple, Visa, etc. So that's
Andy Davis. I work for Endava. We're an advisory and IT services company. We're currently working heavily with a number of OEMs on the topic of payments, helping them work on the integration. But my background is 30 years in payments. I've kind of grown up through the ecosystem, the evolution, working with some of the biggest social media platforms on their invention of wallets or trial invention of wallets. And today, as Endava, we work with some of the biggest payment ecosystems like Visa, MasterCard, actually building platforms for them and helping them scale and integrate some of their services as well. So what we're trying to do is bring some of our industry knowledge from the payment side into the ecosystem to help the conversation.
all right. We have another panelist. He's on Zoom. I'm going to try. I don't know if this will echo. Please bear with me. Yes. You want to go, please?
So best regards from another side of the planet. So sorry for not being on site on your side of things. So my name is Jens. I'm CCO at Starfish. We are a finance and technology company, especially dedicated to focus on payments. We've been the guys who created the first in-car payment experience and technology with one of the leading OEMs out there. So our approach is based on delegated authentication mainly, but we also incorporate other authentication means into the car. So we closely work together with some of the leading OEMs there, but we also integrated with the leading credit card schemes out there, but also with major banks in order to get the things running. And I'm happy to share the thoughts and experience from our side, and also make sure that we move the industry and the whole topic forward with regards to the in-vehicle payment stuff.
Thank you.
So I'm Amit Mehta. I'm head of the features on demand with Stellantis, and we have kind of a 2-for-1 situation going. I have my product management colleague here. Ajit, if you want to introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Amit. Hi, everyone. Ajit Nasravalam, Group Product Manager for Payments at Stellantis. Work very closely with Amit and his team.
Okay, so
Ajit, do you want to sit up there?
So actually, that's a good segue, because I wanted to kind of mention a couple of things as I started. Originally when some of these guys contacted me, I was thinking, well, payments, it's somewhat kind of similar to what we did with Jans. We make do with what we have, right? But we want to convert today's sort of workshop into a very active participation and conversation, because I think from OEM perspective, some parts of this ecosystem are already there. I mean, we have someone from Visa here, right? He's probably wondering, what are you guys talking about? We've been doing it for 40 years, right? Or 100 years, right? So, and then we look at it right now from in-vehicle commerce perspective and say, do we use what we have as is, and all we need to do is maybe put a card swipe in the car, or is there something more to it? And then what part of that go to the product and UX design problem versus technical capabilities problem? So we could talk for hours, but I think, so today I think what we are deciding is to break it into 3 parts. First is show of hands, who here is not somehow direct participant or stakeholder in payments? That someone that says, I got nothing to do with in-vehicle commerce, payments, money. I'm here just to watch fun. Thank you, Leon. Coffee is good. So I think I could have asked everyone else the opposite question, and everybody's hand would go up, right? That we all have somewhat of a stake. So what we want to do is channel that knowledge into some kind of common understanding of the problems. Because I think when it comes to in-vehicle problem, if you ask 3 people, you get 4 different views, right? So that's the first section. And I think we're going to try and bottle the lightning in 35 minutes here, we'll see. The second one is the reference architecture introduction that I think Vamsi we have. And then last one is a call to action that where do we go from here? We want active participation from all of the folks in this SIG, right? So with that, John.
Great, and thank you. And I think what we try to do here is get a stakeholder from kind of all of the different areas. Someone from an OEM, someone from the OEM, someone from a service provider, merchant kind of aggregator, and then someone from kind of actually we had 2 people from financial services to really kind of look at what are the stakeholder considerations, right? So Amit, can you kind of fill in? I know you've kind of talked about what your viewpoint is, but any other thoughts from an OEM perspective about, and actually, can we see a show of hands? Who is here from an OEM interested in payments? Okay, great.
Do you want me to pass around a mic? Do you have an extra mic?
Yeah, please, thank you.
Great.
Yeah, please do. Actually, give it to him. And yeah, so I guess to answer the question, I referred to it in my earlier comments. And I said it yesterday also. To us, the payment has become core capability that we have to focus on. It always was for off-board type transactions, right? So most of the OEMs have some type of connectivity service that we sell today. Most of us have some way of taking credit cards and storing them and charging them. And most of us have not really gone beyond that. As we start now in-vehicle commerce, right, I think, so that's the first point in answer to that. I think the second one, at least from my point of view, I'm very much looking forward to using this SIG to understand how does everyone else look at this problem, which is, I tend to kind of divide the problem statement functionally into 3 areas, which is, do I consider the in-vehicle commerce as mainly about the services we sell and payment is just something that I want to make it invisible? Somewhat similar to when you're downloading an app, you don't really care, all that is set up beforehand, right? But still there needs to be some trigger that needs to go up to the cloud and all that. The second one could be, do I kind of become a primary holder of the credit card information, transaction processor, all of that as OEM, or do I create an ecosystem or become a participant in someone else's ecosystem? So that's where it goes to Apple Pay, Google Pay, basically. And the answer, I don't know where everybody's head is at, and I want to understand that. And I think the third big one is, once we look at those two, then on the back end side of it, on the technology side of this is where my engineering interest comes in. What do I need to do? What capabilities do I need to build like yesterday, and what can wait for a year or two? So those are the 3 points I'm looking forward to understand.
Great, thank you. Vamsi, you want to weigh in here on kind of what your interest is in it?
Yeah, my interest is to sell more coffee and sell more burgers, right? And make that experience seamless. So really, to add on to what Amit was saying, if you look at sort of your mobile experience, it's an experience where you've got to set up your Amazon Pay, you've got to set up every single app, as much as you have an app store where some sort of an Apple Pay is already set up. Still, every single app has card on file. You've got to go through that process, and maybe that works in the mobile modality. But in the car, as you're driving and you're cutting across experiences and trying to make that journey seamless, of saying, hey, the driver's entered their destination, now I know they need to park, and on their way they want to pick up a coffee. How do you really make payments seamless and integrated into the whole experience? So that's really where we as Mavi come into the picture and say, we can bring all this great demand and really understand users' intent and fulfill the intent, but payments are such a fundamental friction point that we need to take care of in that whole journey. So collectively, that's why I'm here to say, what are the solutions that can be put in place?
Great. And I know you had questions for Jens, or wanted his viewpoint. I don't know if we can get him on the line again.
I got to juggle. Jens, please go ahead.
Yeah, let's try it again. For getting me into that. Adding to the points we just heard, we all know the classical channels where we conduct payments, be it like the stationary point of sale, be it the e-commerce side, be it mobile commerce, and how we see in-vehicle payments and payment within a car is pretty much the way of a kind of fourth pillar we will be seeing here, because there will be different business models in the car, around the car, for the car, while driving, while parking, while commuting, and such of things. So that there will be very much new business models around this topic. And what does it have to do with payments? I mean, the whole user experience of payments in a car, while driving, while doing other things, is totally different to what we typically see out there on the one place. But on the other side, pretty much of the things have been developed and are pretty mature in the payment space already. So there is, from our perspective, no need to reinvent the wheel here and to set up totally new things. But the key topic will be really to adopt payment experience, payment checkout experience in a kind of environment which is really relevant for the driver. And one important part here is the authentication part. I mean, I could not imagine driving in a car and having a second factor for authenticating a payment or putting in a credit card numbers, something like that. So there are specific areas which need to be adopted when it comes to in-vehicle payments. And this is the area where the SIG now will have a look at and try to solve things. There are good market developments like from the schemes and with certain technology pieces like the delegated authentication stuff, for example. But they need to be adopted and integrated in the car. And in order to do so, I think it's really important to question from an OEM perspective, really the question, what needs to be built on own on own purpose, where is it possible or valuable to partner with partners out there, or even outsource specific services? There are various options out there to do so, but I think the key thing is, at the end of the day, to have an approach which is really scalable, which is something that is supporting the ecosystem approach of the whole in-vehicle payments industry stuff. And I think that's the key driver out there, because at the end of the day, when it comes to payment and the commerce in the car, the driver is the ultimate person who is deciding where is this commerce conducted. Is it something what is within the ecosystem of the OEM, or is it with someone from external side of things? So that's important to consider when starting with the things.
Great, Andy, do you want to weigh in here a little?
Sure. So there's a lot. You want there. So yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap in my views here. I mean, my heart of all this is I'm at heart a payments nerd, so I'm interested in virtually every single flow you can imagine. We tried to have this conversation yesterday. I think it lasted about 2 hours. Yeah. So this is my condensed version. I think for me, over the last 30 years, I've seen more payments concepts fail than succeed. And generally at the heart of that, there's one key point. Is it delivering value to an end consumer? Does it deliver an output that is actually something somebody wants to use? We could design the most advanced, sophisticated payment solution on the planet, but if no one wants to use it, what's the point of it? And I think that to the previous comments, the payment solutions have been solved. It's about actually mapping them to the use cases. And if I was to boil it down to a little bit of a matrix of kind of 5 points that I'm seeing, having dealt with around about a dozen OEMs in different forms around the globe, I'm seeing at the top of it, there's payments to the OEM and there's payments to third parties. They're two distinct, separate flows that need managing in slightly different ways. And I would encourage people to think about those two angles as two component parts. Then there's how do I process the payment? Now there's a bit of a matrix matching to those top 2 points. Do you want to be merchant of record with all of those payments, collect those? Do you want to think about network tokens and so on? Do you want to actually, the second one is, do you want to actually be the one that is sending payments to a third party? Now, do you want to collect the money for that third party, or do you want to send them the payment credentials and they collect the money for that third party? So that's the next one. But I'm also seeing a model that is somewhat of a disintermediated model as well. This is the topic of virtual cards and virtual IDs. They have a place in the ecosystem. You know, lots of people get talking about wallets being a token or wallets being a stored value, but there's also the view of virtualized accounts and virtualized cards. So I would say that this is the two base principles. Who am I buying a service off, and then how do I pay for it? If you map those user journeys first and then worry about the actual model that you want to align to second, the tools are already in there. Visa, MasterCard, they've all got schemes for tokenization, for scheme tokenization, network tokenization. We've got platforms like Stripe, Adyen, MangoPay, Payoneer. There's all sorts of virtual account creation, so you can act as centralized merchant record without taking on any liability. Equally, we can go to virtual issuing products. There are dozens and dozens of them. I'll just add one last point, and one of our clients we're dealing with at the moment. It wasn't the problem of designing the solution and answering those questions. We got those answered pretty well. It was how do I now run this in 30 odd different countries? And the payments device at each endpoint is very different when I go from Brazil to India to Central Europe to the US. So that's one of my pet topics at the moment is going country to country and going, how does the model change because regulations are different and so on and so on. So yeah, that's my condensed
No,
version
actually,
of
I'd love to add on to that. So I'll give you a use case we were talking about yesterday about country to country. So one of the things that we do at Mavi is if you just take a general consumer experience today of, say, purchasing a coffee in your car or a burger in your car, we actually confirm the transaction when the restaurant says, okay, I've accepted the order, right? And then the driver goes and picks up the order. apparently, in Europe, in some countries, in some locales, this is not allowed, right? So you cannot take payments before the goods are delivered. So there are a lot of such nuances place to place that we've got to take into account. And, again, it's definitely a scale problem. And how we look at payments, of course, is ubiquitous, but every locale has their own differences.
Has anyone else has kind of the why question, like why are you, so far I think Andrew mentioned a few things, like is there anyone else that's doing the payment slightly differently because your why is different, your use cases are special? I'm curious. Other than trying to sell, like you said, burger and coffee. What's your question again? I guess what we're talking about in this section is why would an OEM be interested in in-vehicle commerce, right? And I think primary use case seems like selling of some service. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I work at WEX, and so we're a fleet payments company. And so we're in the unique position where it's actually simplified for us because we're the payments network, we're the issuer of the card, everything. And the vast majority of our cards are actually directly tied to a single vehicle asset. So that vehicle for us can become literally the payment instrument. In essence, the VIN can become the token for the payment. And so it's vastly simplified for us. We don't really care who's performing the transactions. That's great information. If we know who the driver is, who's fueling a vehicle, that's very useful information, but it's not necessary to perform the transaction. So for us, if we can get the VIN number, be connected to the vehicle in that matter, and have the VIN number essentially initiate the transaction, activates a fuel pump, and the transaction goes through and we approve it based on the VIN number. We don't even need a card number. We don't need a wallet. So we're in a very unique position that way.
I'm going to say, just to add on to your point, it's an example that we've been discussing with a few clients. The benefit of doing that virtual issuance model is actually it'll work on any device that's out there already. And some of it go to the point of lots of these solutions have been solved before. Booking.com have been operating this model to pay villas and hotels and hire companies all over the planet for years and years. There's some quirks in the model as it evolves at the moment, but it's an example of the problems you're trying to solve have been solved, and there's vendors in the ecosystem that it's just wiring the right combination. But you need to solve your use cases to get the right partner mapping. My view is actually I think everyone will end up with a multimodal model because it'll need to operate differently in different territories for different use cases.
I have a question to the gentleman. Would you consider that a closed loop system? That's what you're. Yes, precisely. Yeah. Okay.
Hi, I'm James Simon. I'm with AWS, and just a slightly different purpose. We've been working with partners and our customers to create the ability to order parts and pay for service in the vehicle, either if you had a flat tire or post-accident, as part of a roadside continuum, which is a little bit different than just ordering a coffee, right?
Yeah. Thank you very much, because I was thinking that that's something that
Hey, Matis Manja, Ford Motor Company. I deal a lot with charging, so just wanted to bring in a different perspective, because you mentioned there are established payment methods, and I agree there's not going to be something on top that's just going to exchange all of that. Like me personally, I go to a website that I'm not familiar with, and it shows me a button, pay with Amazon. It's like, oh, thank God, I don't have to fill out all this stuff, but I just click on it and be done with it, right? So I think all the established payment methods, they're just going to stay. So my perspective is in the charging domain, we have established payment method as well, which are based on certificates that are in the vehicle. Nobody ever looked into that. Why are we not using that as another payment method, right? I mean, it's easy to say, but in theory, all that exists, right? And picking up what you said, there are also concepts based on VIN numbers or MAC addresses of chargers, which is called auto charge, which is unsecure from my perspective, right? So going to something like a certificate-based system to initiate a exchange, energy versus money, whatever, right? So these things exist in that domain. Why not just use that for something else, right?
Yeah, so a lot of these use cases, and we'll get to questions. We really do want these questions and some feedback. But a lot of what we are looking to do in this particular project is to kind of help organize not just the use cases in which OEMs are becoming mobility companies, where you need to actually integrate and work with direct with consumers, but also the merchant ecosystem and things that you pay for, and how to understand and create a position in which you can then take some of these other ideas or concepts and build upon a kind of base foundation of what you might do in the vehicle, and then what you actually might do just kind of direct to a platform that supports that payment as well. So
Just joining those bits up. One thing, the wallet architecture, when we get into that conversation,
yeah,
I'd urge that to be kind of agnostic. It shouldn't matter what the payment device is that's hanging off that wallet. As you say, it could be the VIN, and it could be an identifier that says invoice this person once a month for their charging. It could be a virtual closed loop account. It could be an open loop Visa issued card. It could be actually the direct tokenized card that the person's actually using. It shouldn't really matter. We can move to PayPal, Alipay, AliExpress. You can move around the different ecosystems and use the preferred methods either to suit the use case or suit the territory. The wallet should just be a trigger. That's the kind of hub of getting this right.
So one last question, and then I guess we have to move to the next phase,
Sure,
at least for
yeah.
today. Please go ahead.
I mean, hi, Tomasz Dzikowski. I just wanted to give also the different aspects. So I'm working with the video streaming services, so integrating the big OTT streamers and also local ones. And obviously there is this revenue sharing opportunity with the freemium content and also the ad tier payments and pay-per-view and Dolby Atmos. So I think one of my biggest, let's say, the request from this workshop is just to understand what common APIs can be included in a token about the driver ID or information in order to authenticate that this user is eligible for a certain plan, and if does, how the payment can move smoothly. And for sure this will speed up the integration, bundling offer, co-marketing, co-promotion, and eventually co-revenue share with the OEMs.
That's definitely something we are going to address as a part of this. As John progresses through the presentation, you will see what we're trying to lay out are trying to establish common APIs. To everyone's point here, your specific implementations are your specific implementations, but as long as service providers have common APIs they can integrate with, it's going to become a common.
One point to underline on that topic, and I think I'm probably going to steal some of John's thunder here, but coming in from outside into this group, right? Think of today's session as a trailer. And then we all get a chance to be Hollywood stars in the movie, right? That's really what this SIG is, right? Because I think ultimately OEM stakeholders, when it comes to money, everybody's got a self-interest. So it won't be that be all end all one solution, but there are some common, and you hit it on the head just now. I think I love how you phrased it, which is you were referring to entitlement, right? What is, and maybe it's, I think your colleague there was saying about, hey, entitlement goes with a win versus the person. In some cases, in some geographies, that entitlement can be assumed, and if I allow anybody driving that car to achieve, perform certain things, it's okay. But depending on what function that is in some geographies, well, that's a big no-no. So these are the what I think at minimum I'm hoping to get out of this SIG is the common understanding of these problems as they relate to automotive in-vehicle commerce scenarios. There are some differences. I think I can tell you my own personal journey. I started somewhat similar to, well, what's so special? And as I started getting deeper and deeper, I realized, well, there are some common problems, and I think that's a perfect segue actually into Vamsi, the next session of the reference architecture, because it's not perfect. Like I said, a lot of times the trailers can only show so much, but movie will be awesome.
Yeah, and in some cases we're talking about the sequel already before the first movie's been released. and I think to your point, what we're interested in is, and what we're trying to start with this project is kind of an initial starting point in which we deal with, I think, what is the most kind of common thing that we think of when we think of in-vehicle payment, because we call it in-vehicle payment. But really, there's a broader topic of payments in automotive. And that payments in automotive is really around all the use cases of these digital services that an OEM might be looking to create, whether it's parts and service with their dealerships or e-commerce, whether it's digital content, because those models are totally different as well, because there's subscription or digital entitlement or regional issues in terms of use of that content. Some of it might be pay for a particular service, whether it's car wash or maybe parking. Some of it might be picking up goods from another retailer. Some of it might not even be the direct transaction itself. Let's say you're picking up goods from Target. But along those same rails is kind of the capability that you're trying to deliver to the customer. And we're going to start here. Maybe the sequel will have digital content in app stores, because I think that's a topic that is gathered a lot of interest. I mean, that room was packed when we talked about app stores, and there's very specific app store payment use cases that are all digital that we'd probably likely maybe tackle in the next one. But is this broader picture of payments in automotive that really we want this SIG to help support the payments part, so that OEMs can have the confidence to move into those areas of digital services with this layer of complexity that Andy, I'm sure, knows, and Jens knows very well. What we wanted to do right now was kind of move on to a poll. Actually, a lot of the questions that were asked kind of are reflected in this poll. What I realized is I did not pull the URL for the poll, but if everyone can use their cameras, I can kind of relay where we're at in terms of responses. I've never used this before, so. How do we get the response side of this thing? Does it happen in real time? Okay. Oh, there we go. I'm sharing it with you. I know, that's the thing. I didn't put the URL to open it on the browser. So.
Mine worked. I just put a camera to that. It worked.
No, meaning I can't pull the results, because the results happen in real time, and unfortunately I didn't pull the URL in for the results.
You need your computer.
Yeah, I might be.
You only can't end the frequencies of me.
You're supposed to answer it too, Roger.
I think he's running for the office.
Okay, not sure how I'm going to show these. Oh, use Menti and join code. Let's do that here.
If that's hard, maybe we'll do it the old-fashioned way. Raise your hands.
I got it. I got it.
You got it?
Yep. Okay, I'm supposed to have this. Um,
There it is. Yay.
Oh, this is fascinating.
okay. I don't know why there's not a percentage.
The graph looks good.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's interesting that there is a yes, there is a bar with yes and actually combined
So
departments.
I'm actually curious if I can dive deep on that. Like I mean, if you can share, what type of organizations have a separate vehicle payment department? And even from OEM, go ahead.
We're a provider. I'm Gary Roloff from Parkopedia, and we're a provider of a payment capabilities, mostly vehicle-centric type of content.
That makes sense, yeah.
And that's why I put yes. I put yes because we have a specific department that's dedicated for in-vehicle payments. And the panel up here has been great as far as understanding the complexity. I came to Parkopedia in 2019, and I'm still learning on the capabilities, the complexity of integrating payments to the car. But there is that complexity, and it needs to be understood. And I think there's, we've been doing this since 2017. It was parking information. I don't know if you noticed, but Parkopedia is mostly with parking. But essentially, the fragmentation of the merchants and the companies that you have to aggregate together to create an experience, a seamless experience for the user. That's the difficulty in all this.
Actually,
so
you
that's why
answered
we
the
have
question.
a dedicated department for it.
You answered already my follow-up question. Like, if I were to tell you what is one thing from your point of view a SIG like this should solve, you're saying fragmentation. Is that
correct? And that's why we expanded from parking to fuel and to tolling and to EV, because of the fragmentation. That's all part of that too, is that complexity. We've done a good job on the parking side, so we've been asked to expand beyond that.
makes sense? Thank you.
I think just a comment on that, something that I've seen as a common theme over the years. Any industry that's decided to move into payments, having a dedicated hub somewhere in the business that's responsible for it, either from a knowledge or a cost perspective or a bit of both, it's critical to getting this work. You need an owner in the business that's going to act as that glue. We saw retail make mistakes. I've seen some of the biggest retailers in the world only put a head of payments in place after existing for over 50 years. And they're then having to unpick 50 years of bad technology decisions, and it's a headache. So I would say where the auto industry is at the moment, there's a good opportunity to lay the right foundations, put some ownership in organizations.
You want to go next? Oh, that's an interesting one. So can we just raise hands? Who from OEM is here? Just quick poll. BMW. We have some GM, Ford, Stellantis. I think we have a.
This
good
is where the rubber meets the road, everyone.
So what do we mean by, like, if I can pick a, like, I'll be honest, I wasn't sure exactly if I understood the question, so whenever I don't understand, no is the answer. But what did you understand, Richard or Florian? What did you understand, like what the question was going at?
Actually, skip that one. I didn't understand.
This was to be a little provocative, right? Because actually, Amit and I had a bit of a conversation about, why do we think that things have not moved faster in this area? And to a certain degree, I think part of the thinking was there's a certain amount of control that the OEM really wants to have in terms of dealing with their customer and dealing with the data of their customer. And I think one of the perspectives that needs to shift is that there needs to be a certain amount of freedom that the customer has to be able to make decisions and choices about these commerce transactions. And that means giving up some of this control to your partners, to the service providers who are providing some of these new capabilities for you.
Can we maybe talk about the elephant in the room a little bit? Because I think by serving up these new experiences, we all strive to get a little bit of the gross margin from our customers. And this gross margin is usually small. And so payment becomes suddenly a big elephant, literally, because depending on how you structure your system, you can pay between 1 and 12 times as much for the same transaction. I would love to hear from the experts how to get your arms around that problem.
Hey, but we're running, I guess, time-wise, we're running up here. So they want one more question.
I think somebody wanted to say something.
No, I just, kind of related to that aspect. I think the way I perceive this question is, it's kind of how when Google Automotive Services came out, right? There's a huge aspect that's unknown from the OEM standpoint. Of course, now there's several OEMs that have incorporated gas into their infotainment system with controls in place. And I think that's kind of where the payments aspect is when you talk about OEM and in-car commerce. So that was my background when I responded no to this question, because I think it's growing, but we don't have sufficient information at the moment.
We're gonna shift and move quickly because unfortunately we're running out of time. But what we wanted to cover, so suffice it to say, I think this is a topic that's now kind of increasing in interest, and what we're proposing is a reference design for an in-vehicle wallet, and you can find that document if I hit presentation here.
So
Go
go ahead, John.
Sorry, you can find that proposal here, which is a Google Doc, and hopefully OEM folks can actually open Google Docs. If not, let us know. We also want to start basically putting this project on, or gathering feedback for this project, and then also beginning to schedule regular meetings around the proposal and gathering that feedback. There's still a lot to do in terms of preparing the project. So if you're interested in it, please email Vamsi, and his email is here. But those next steps are really around the project are, what are the working modes, further defining the deliverables, scheduling meetings and milestones and goals, and then establishing what would be kind of the V1 of the project. We have a list of interested parties, the other participants who are interested in working together, and that includes some of the participants you have here and then some folks that are in the room. We will try to get everyone together on some sort of common communication, and Paul from COVESA, I'm sure will be assisting with that. And if there's any questions at all, please feel free to email Vamsi. He'll be kind of gathering everybody's kind of interest, and then we'll look to kind of establish also some project leadership as well.
I think too, what you're seeing here, this is another example of how these birds of a feather projects take shape. And so at lunch, once again, Vamsi, please approach him. You can start giving some business cards, but then do the email. We'll build these communities, we'll get these regular meetings going and get these projects going to take shape. And once again, it's the open collaboration, OEMs, tiers, stakeholders, everybody. So once again, just thanks so much. And once again, you can see the interest of this and why these things are so important. So thank you again.